Hello, and welcome. Tonight, we are going on a journey, but not to a place you might expect. We are leaving behind the familiar, bright, and cheerful world we know. We are stepping out of the light. Let's begin by painting a picture of what we are leaving behind. Think for a moment of our modern Halloween. Think of the sounds, the chime of a doorbell, the plastic crinkle of a candy wrapper, the chorus of laughter from a sidewalk. Think of the sights, the bright electric orange of porch lights, the cheerful carved faces of pumpkins, the manufactured sheen of a polyester costume. Think of the smells, the sugary rush of chocolate and corn syrup, the faint waxy scent of a cheap candle. Now, let's take all of that away. Erase the doorbells. Erase the plastic wrappers in the sidewalks. Turn off every electric light until the world is lit only by the moon and the stars. Replace the smell of sugar with the thick, pungent scent of wood smoke. Replace the plastic with the rough, oily feel of an uncured animal hide. Replace the cheerful, bright orange with the deep, damp brown of mud and the dark, unsettling shadows of a forest that feels far too close. We're tiptoeing into this other world, the dark, drafty, pumpkinless, and occasionally suspicious-smelling world of medieval Halloween. Yes, before it was pumpkin spice lattes and decorative skeletons, Halloween was something much, much weirder. This is not a holiday of pleasant manufactured fright. It is a season of genuine, pervasive, existential dread. There is no trick-or-treating. There are no $60 rubber masks. And brace yourself. There are no fun-sized candy bars. Instead, there are ancient bonfires. There are ominous bread rolls. There are teenagers dressed in animal skins, not for a party, but for protection. And underneath it all, there is that healthy, constant, low-level hum of anxiety. This is the original Halloween. It is a patchwork, a strange and smoky quilt stitched together from pagan bonfire parties, a strategic Christian rebranding, and a general, profound nervousness about the dead. Forget plastic bats fluttering on a string. In this world, you worry about actual spirits. Spirits who, according to the stories, are hungry. Hungry for a snack, or maybe just a toe. Tonight, in this world we are visiting, the boundaries between our world and the next are allegedly thin. The veil is weak. And so, it is time to light a fire. It is time to say a prayer. And it is time to hope with all your might that the ancestors are feeling generous and not vengeful. So, dim the lights. If you have a fan, perhaps switch it on, just enough for that ghostly, drafty breeze. Get comfortable. Maybe even wrap yourself in a blanket. Bonus points if it's scratchy wool and smells vaguely of cabbage for historical accuracy. We have a long night ahead of us. Let us begin. Let's set the scene properly. To understand this night, you must first understand the season. It is late October. The crops are in. Now, let's pause on that phrase. The crops are in. For us, it's a passive idea, something that happens far away. For the medieval villager, it is the single most important fact of their existence. It is the climax of a year of back-breaking, muscle-tearing labor. Imagine the ache in your shoulders from the scythe, the deep, stinging cuts on your hands from the chaff, the communal, desperate race against the first frost, the last sheaf of wheat, the last heavy basket of root vegetables isn't just food. It is survival. It is the physical manifestation of life itself. It is the collected, stored-up sunlight that must last you and your family through the long, cold, dark months to come. So, as you stand in the village square, there is a great communal sigh of relief. You have survived another harvest. You have done it. The larder, such as it is full. But this relief is shallow. It is fleeting, because with the end of the harvest comes a new, creeping anxiety, the anxiety of winter. The days are getting short. The sun, which was your partner for months, now seems like a distant, fickle acquaintance, abandoning you earlier and earlier each day. The nights are getting colder, and this is not the dry, crisp cold of a modern insulated house. This is a damp, penetrating cold. It's a cold that rises from the packed earth floor of your hut, a cold that slips through the wattle and daub walls like a ghost. You feel it in your bones. You are down to your last pair of dry socks, which, incidentally, are made of scratchy, woven goat hair. The wind is picking up. It doesn't just whistle. It moans. It sounds, as the source text so wonderfully puts it, like your mother-in-law's disapproval. This is the moment you find yourself in. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the year 1382. It is All Hallows' Eve, the most haunted night of the year. You are standing in a muddy village square. The mud is not a quaint detail. It is a constant presence, a mixture of dirt, animal waste, and spilled water that clings to your boots and the hem of your tunic. You are wearing your second worst tunic. Why the second worst? Because your absolute worst is reserved for manual labor, and your best is for Sunday Mass. This is the tunic for a special but messy occasion. You are surrounded by the sights and smells of the evening, the flicker of communal bonfires, the loud, desperate cheer of drunken peasants, and the faint, acrid smell of burning rutabaga. That smell, it's not the pleasant, smoky scent of a barbecue. It's the smell of scarcity. It's the smell of burning things that are not quite good enough to eat, but too valuable to let rot. This is the original Halloween, a patchwork, as we said, of pagan parties, Christian rebranding, and that deep, pervasive nervousness about the dead. Before we explore the traditions of this night, we must first understand the belief that powers them. Before this night was called Halloween, your village and the ancestors of your village prepared for Samhain. That's pronounced Sowen, as in, you are sowing over your head with these spirits. And Samhain is old. It is nobody knows when it started old. Long before anyone in Rome had heard of Jesus, long before the first stones of the village church were laid, the Celts across the British Isles would mark this term of year. It was a fire festival. It was the end of the harvest, the end of the light half of the year, and the beginning of the dark half. It was, in essence, the Celtic New Year, a time of endings and beginnings, and like all such times, it was dangerous. Tonight, according to the legend that every person in this village believes is fact, The veil between the world of the living and the world of the dead is at its thinnest. Now, let's try to truly understand what this means. This isn't a metaphor. It's not a poetic idea. To the medieval villager, this is a physical, tactile, and terrifying reality. The air itself feels different. It feels charged, thin. The fog that rolls into the fields at dusk doesn't just seem like condensed water. It seems like a shroud, a place where shapes can form. A threshold, like the doorway to your hut, the wooden gate of the village palisade, or a crossroads in the middle of a dark wood, is a place of terrible power. You do not linger in such places. You cross yourself, you mutter a prayer, and you hurry along. This belief in the thinning veil is born from a deep human duality. On the one hand, it offers a sliver of profound hope. The veil is thin. This is great news if you want to catch up with Grandma Edith, who passed from the plague 2 summers ago. You miss her. You want to tell her the harvest was good. You want to ask her advice. The idea that she might be close, that she might hear you, is a deep, aching comfort. But then comes the dread. This is less great if you're worried about all those ancestors you never returned a borrowed shovel to. What if Grandma Edith isn't happy with you? What if the ancestor you wronged, the uncle you cheated in a land trade, the neighbor whose fence you accidentally moved, what if they come back? What if they are feeling vengeful? And even worse, what if the visitors are not human at all? What if the fair folk, the trickster spirits, or something ancient and nameless from the deep woods decides to wander into the village just because it can? This is the psychological terror of Samhain. It is the personification of the seasonal anxiety. The light is dying. The world is dying. And on this one night, the dead are walking. So, what do? What do you do when the walls between worlds are as thin as tissue paper, and the only thing hungrier than the living tonight is the dead? You build a bonfire. But this is not some polite, Instagrammable campfire. Not a small, tidy circle of stones. This is a full-on, towering inferno. A pillar of flame and smoke that could be seen from the next village, and possibly by anyone in the afterlife with good eyesight. This fire is the ritual heart of the night, and it doesn't just appear. For weeks, this fire has been a communal project. Villagers have been dragging wood from the forest, not the good timber, that's precious, reserved for building and for the Lord's fires. This is the cast-offs. This is deadfall, old rotten thatch from a leaky roof, broken fence posts, the remnants of a cart that shattered a wheel. The children, in between their chores, have been tasked with gathering armfuls of dry kindling. It is a pooling of resources, a collective, communal effort to build a fortress of light against the encroaching dark. And this fire is not just for warmth. Oh no. Fire is a magical, spiritual force. It is the medieval equivalent of a do not disturb sign, a blazing beacon that tells the spirits of the night this far and no further. The village elders, their faces already creased like old tree roots, lead the ritual. They stand close to the flames, their cloaks slightly singed. And the ritual begins. You and every other villager trudge through that muddy lane, shuffling into the square. You are clutching whatever meager offering you've managed to scrounge up. A shriveled beet, a hunk of bread, perhaps the one from last year that is gone moldy. Or, if you're really lucky, a slightly less moldy turnip. You approach the heat. The fire is enormous. Not roast a marshmallow enormous, but sacrifice your eyebrow hair to the gods enormous. You toss your offering into the flames, along with the little whispered prayer. Keep my cows alive. Let my son find a wife. Please, for the love of all things holy, let next year's oats grow better than this year's. It is both a celebration and a desperate negotiation with the universe, a plea. Now, stand there for a moment. Feel this. The heat is a physical blow to your face, so intense it makes your eyes water. But your back, the part of you facing the dark village, is freezing, still covered in the damp, cold mist of the night. The shadows cast by the flames are immense. They leap and dance, turning your neighbors into grotesque, flickering giants against the wattle walls of the hovels. The air stings your eyes. It's full of smoke. But it's not just the clean smell of pine. It's the acrid, earthy smell of the burning root vegetables, the singed wool of someone's cloak, and, as the source text jokes, whatever Gerald dropped into the ashes when no one was looking. This fire is your insurance policy. And if you have nothing to offer, good luck. Into this world of thin veils, ancestral spirits, and blazing pagan bonfires, a new organizing force arrives. Into this torch-lit chaos comes the church. And the church, in its wisdom, understands something fundamental about human nature. You cannot simply erase a tradition this old, this deep. If you try to ban it, it will simply go underground, where it becomes more powerful, more secretive. So the church does not erase. It absorbs, it co-opts, it reframes. Around the 8th century, in a move that can only be described as the original brand takeover, Christian leaders execute a brilliant strategic pivot. They look at this chaotic, fearful, and immensely popular festival, and they plant their own flag right in the middle of it. They declare November 1st to be All Saints' Day, or, as it was known in Old English, All Hallows Mass. Hallow meaning holy or saint. And if November 1st is All Hallows' Day, then what is the night before? October 31st? It is the eve of All Hallows, All Hallows' Eve, which over the centuries slurs and shortens into Halloween. Suddenly, your pagan bonfire bash is no longer a negotiation with ancient nameless spirits. Oh no, it is now an official pre-game for Mass. The energy is cleverly redirected. Your prayers are now directed not just at your ancestors, but at an ever-growing official list of saints. The bonfire is no longer just a magical ward. It is a symbol of the light of Christ scattering the darkness. Now, let's think about the village priest. He's a practical man. He lives here. He knows these people. He knows he cannot stop them from building their fire or from whispering the old names. So, he blesses the fire. He leads the prayers. He reframes the entire event. The dead you are worried about? They are not vengeful spirits, he explains. They are simply souls trapped in purgatory, waiting for your help. And you can help them, not with offerings of turnips, but with prayers. This is a powerful, comforting new logic. But in reality, what happens? The idea is to sanctify the season. But really, most villagers just add the new saints to the old guest list. They carry on as usual. It's a form of spiritual hedging. You'll say a prayer for Grandma Edith, just like you always have, but you'll add a Hail Mary and a prayer to St. Peter on top, just in case. You cover all your bases. And so the holiday becomes this strange layered thing. Part harvest festival, part supernatural insurance policy, and now part holy obligation. But even with the church's new comforting framework, the fundamental fear remains. It remains because in medieval Europe, the night itself is the enemy. Let's step away from the festival for a moment and talk about the simple, baseline reality of darkness. Tonight, on Halloween, the fear is heightened. But on any night, the average medieval villager faces the dark with all the joy and optimism of someone heading into tax season with a broken quill and a suspicious rash. First, there is the simple physical fact that dark is really, really dark. We, in our modern world, have never truly experienced this. We are bathed in the constant, ambient glow of streetlights, car headlights, glowing smartphones, and the unblinking blue LED of a security system. Our night is a shade of deep blue. The medieval night is black. It is an oppressive, total, and profound absence of light. If the moon is new, or if the sky is heavy with clouds, you cannot see your hand in front of your face. There are no streetlights. There are no convenient nightlights. Light is a resource. Light is expensive. Candles exist, but they are a luxury reserved for emergencies or for the rich. And we are not talking about pleasant, scented beeswax candles. Those are for the church altar or the Lord's manor table. They are a symbol of immense wealth. You have tallow candles. Tallow is rendered animal fat. It sputters. It smokes. It gives off a weak, greasy orange light. And it smells, faintly but constantly, of burnt, rotting meat. You do not burn these for pleasure. You burn them to deliver a baby, to say a prayer for the dying, or to hunt for the rat that just ran across your face. Most nights, your only light is the embers in the hearth, and those are guarded fiercely, like the last slice of cake at a family reunion. The most important chore before bed is to bank the fire, to cover the glowing coals with a careful layer of ash so that a spark remains in the morning. If the fire goes out, it is a small disaster. You must suffer the humiliation of walking to your neighbor's hut, shivering in the dawn, to borrow a single hot coal. So on most nights, you just squint into the void, trying to tell the difference between your cousin snoring and a ghost preparing to collect old grudges. Your hovel is not soundproof. You hear everything. The wind rattles the wooden shutters. The poorly seasoned timbers of the hut pop and groan as the temperature drops. The mice in the thatch roof sound like they are staging a jousting tournament. And then the other sounds, the animal sounds. In modern horror, it's always the howl of a wolf. And yes, if you hear a wolf, You get to spend the night trying to remember which family member runs the slowest. But in medieval reality, you're just as likely to be terrified by a hedgehog rustling in the leaves, a barn owl screeching, a sound like a toddler being possessed, or a stray cow breaking wind in the next field over. Every single one of these normal agricultural sounds, when filtered through the absolute darkness and the third mug of ale, sounds vaguely supernatural. Every unexplained breeze is a phantom. Every shadow might be the soul of someone you forgot to pray for. You cross yourself so often that your right shoulder develops more muscle than your left. But the spirits and the phantoms are not the only threat. In many ways, they are not even the primary threat. The real danger is much closer to home. It's sitting right across from you in the dark. It's your neighbors. Medieval villages are described as tight-knit, but that is a romanticism. They are tight-knit mostly because no one can afford to live more than 30 feet apart. Privacy does not exist. Your walls are thin. Everyone knows your business. Gossip is not just idle chatter. It is the main form of entertainment, and it is also the local security system. It is also a weapon. If you are seen doing something unusual, if you have a slightly better harvest than your neighbor, if you are seen talking to yourself, it is noted, it is discussed, it is analyzed, and it is often twisted. Let's take your neighbor, Agnes. If Agnes so much as coughs at midnight, the entire village will know by dawn. And someone, perhaps someone who has an old grudge against her, will blame it on witchcraft, the weather, or her questionable taste in onions. Paranoia is a way of life. You don't just fear the supernatural, you fear the natural too. That bad blood between you and Gerald, the one who steals your turnips, it simmers under the surface all year. But it comes out at night in the form of mysterious noises outside your door, a suddenly missing chicken, or the odd missile made of mud and pig dung launched through your window shutter. And if you are a stranger, if you are just passing through, you might as well tattoo the word suspicious on your forehead. A stranger is an unknown. A stranger has no loyalty to the village. A stranger is another mouth to feed in a world of profound scarcity. Every unknown visitor after dark is assumed by default to be a thief, a murderer, or, worst of all, a tax collector. It's a community, yes, but it is also a standoff. So, on this night, this All Hallows Eve, you bar your door. You use a thick wooden stick, though it's mostly for show. You whisper a prayer to every saint you can remember, and you lie awake on your straw-filled mattress, listening to the world conspire outside. Somewhere in the dark, an owl hoots, a dog barks, your own stomach growls, a hollow, empty sound that could definitely be mistaken for a banshee if you weren't careful. The night stretches on, heavy, cold, and full of secrets. You pull your scratchy wool blanket tighter. You hope, desperately, that the only thing that visits you tonight is sleep. Because in the medieval night, you fear not only what you can't see, but what you know all too well. So, you are in your village. The bonfires are lit. The darkness is total, and the veil is thin. How then do you protect yourself? The church has given you prayers. The community has given you the fire. But the old, deep magic of Samhain demands something more. It demands that you do not face this night as yourself. This brings us to the costumes. We must, once again, erase our modern minds. We are not talking about looking glamorous or clever. We are not talking about a costume contest or winning eternal bragging rights. The goal of the medieval disguise is far more primal. It is about survival. It is about fear. Why would you dress up? The logic is woven from several tangled threads of superstition. The first and most common theory is that of camouflage. If the night is full of wandering spirits, vengeful ghosts, and mischievous otherworldly beings, the last thing you want to do is present yourself as a warm, living, vulnerable human. You are a target. So, you adopt a camouflage of the things you fear. You dress in rags, in old flour sacks, in things that look like grave shrouds. You rub soot on your face, not as makeup, but to blur your features, to look like a shadow or something that has already been burned. You tie dead weeds around your waist. You want a visiting spirit to glance at you, mistake you for one of its own, another lost wandering soul, and move along. You want to be invisible. The second theory is one of confusion. You wear animal skins. You strap cow horns to your forehead. You drape a wolf's pelt over your shoulders. This is not just camouflage. It is an attempt to trick the spirits. If you look like a goat, or a wolf, or a cow, maybe the ghost of your angry neighbor Gerald will skip your house and go bother someone else. In practice, of course, it's just a good excuse to hide your face and anonymously heckle Gerald for stealing your turnips. The disguise gives you a strange, intoxicating freedom. You are, for a few hours, anonymous. The rigid social structure of the village, where everyone knows your business, suddenly melts away. You can be someone or something else. But there is a third, deeper and darker logic. The logic of sympathetic magic. By wearing the head of a beast or the skin of a predator, you are not just hiding. You are, for a glimmering, terrifying moment, becoming. You are channeling the spirit of the animal. You are borrowing its strength, its wildness, its lack of human fear. You are, in essence, fighting fire with fire. You are showing the darkness that you too can be a monster. So, you begin the process. You rummage through the family chest. It mostly holds disappointment, spare twine, and that one shirt you only wear for funerals. But in the bottom, you find it. A tattered bit of sheepskin, stiff with age. Or an ancient, crusty cloak that smells powerfully of both feet and secrets. This will have to do. The best medieval costumes rely on this kind of creative panic and a willing, wholesale acceptance that dignity is, for tonight, overrated. Now, the centerpiece, the disguise for your face. Again, there is no Spirit Halloween Superstore. There is no Pinterest for last-minute ideas. There is only the barn, the woods, and your own fumbling, probably cold hands. The materials are sourced from the earth. The most obvious and most powerful place to look is the barn. Animal skulls, This is the original statement piece. That sheep that met an untimely end last spring, the one the wolves got? Congratulations! Its head, or what's left of it, is now starring in your Halloween ensemble. It has been carefully cleaned, which is to say it was left out in the sun for a few weeks and you've just shaken most of the ants out of it. It is still greasy to the touch, and it carries the faint, sweet, stomach-turning smell of old bones. You strap it over your own head with links of twine, or perhaps some old, cracked leather strips you cut from a broken shoe. The effect is immediate and profound. It is equal parts terrifying and confusing. Is that a masked spirit at the fire, or is that just Gerald finally making good use of his failed sheep herding career? But maybe you're not in the mood to smell like old bones all night. No problem. There are other options. You can take thick scraps of leather, perhaps bartered from the local tanner. You soak them in water, and then you mold them over your own face or over a log and let them dry. The result is a stiff, impersonal, and deeply unnerving mask. Or you can go to the woods. You can carve a face into a piece of soft bark. You can weave a mask from river reeds, always making sure to poke enough holes for seeing and, if possible, for panicked breathing. Now, you must paint it. But you have no paint. You use what is at hand. You go to the hearth and scoop up a handful of cold black soot. You smear it across the mask or across your own skin to deaden the features. You find some overripe berries, perhaps, and crush them, using the dark staining juice to create bloody-looking streaks. Or, if all else fails, you just use mud. A dab of ash across the cheek. A smear of beetroot under the eyes. And suddenly you are transformed from a mildly tired peasant into the specter of the haunted moors. You tie on a sprig of wilted herbs or some dangling chicken feathers. This is half protection charm, half accidental salad. The masks are not just for show. They serve that vital dual purpose: to confuse wandering spirits. The logic is simple. If a ghost can't recognize your face, it can't haunt you. It can't follow you home. It can't whisper your name in the dark. To confuse your real-life enemies. If Gerald can't recognize you, he can't ask to borrow your axe again. It's a win-win. Children, of course, get in on the act, using whatever they find. Bits of rag, a squirrel pelt. The results are frequently horrifying, but no one is judging. If anything, the goal is to look as strange as possible. There is always at least one kid who manages to combine sheep bones, a blackened potato, and what's left of someone's Sunday shirt to such alarming effect that even the priest crosses himself twice. Underneath the bone, leather, and vegetable fragments, everyone knows each other's secrets. But the disguise gives you permission to act a little bolder, laugh a little louder, and, if you're careful, sneak an extra soul cake from the communal table. Let's talk about the original jack-o'-lantern. Modern Halloween is awash in grinning, cheerful pumpkins. Rows of them, lit from within, their orange faces a beacon of fun. But in medieval Europe, the pumpkin is an ocean away. It is a world away, languishing somewhere in the Americas, completely unknown. Here, in your muddy village, you make do with what the earth gives you. And what the earth gives you in late October is not cheerful or orange or easy to carve. The earth gives you the humble, the stubborn, the profoundly uncooperative turnip. It begins innocently enough. Someone, perhaps your neighbor, trying to show up Gerald's haunted beetroot from last year, suggests making a lantern. It will frighten off spirits. It will light the path. But there is no smooth, hollow pumpkin waiting. Instead, you are handed a turnip. Now, let's really picture this object. It is warty. It is gnarled. It is often covered in little fibrous roots that look like a tangled beard. It is roughly the size and consistency of an irritated badger. And it is dense. It is a solid, heavy, pale-fleshed thing. If you're lucky, it's not sprouting a mysterious mold. If you're unlucky, well, welcome to the medieval tradition of lowered expectations. You are armed with a knife. This knife has seen more bread than vegetables. Its edge is dull and the tip is probably broken. You set to work. The turnip, however, is not in a cooperative mood. Unlike a pumpkin, which is mostly hollow and offers a clear, soft interior, the turnip offers nothing. It resists. You jab, you twist, you try to scrape. You mutter curses that your priest would definitely not approve of. The flesh is tough. The skin is tougher. Halfway through, your hand is numb. Your knuckles are scraped raw, and you are genuinely wondering if it's too late to switch religions. It is like trying to carve a block of wet, fibrous wood. Eventually, after what feels like hours, you have hollowed out a cavity. It is not a generous, roomy cavity. It is a small, grudging hole, barely big enough to fit the world's saddest, smallest candle. Then comes the artistry, if you can call it that. You cannot carve a happy face. The turnip will not allow it. The material itself resists subtlety. You gouge a few holes for eyes. You hack a jagged horizontal slit for a mouth. The result looks less like a mischievous spirit and more like something you'd find lurking at the bottom of a root cellar. It is not cheerful. It is grumpy. It looks pained. It looks, in fact, like it's still angry about being carved. Lighting the turnip is its own adventure. Candles are precious, and the wind outside is eager to help your lantern fail. You balance the tallow stub inside, shield the flame with your hand, and set the whole thing in your window or on a post near the path. The light flickers. It is not a bright, welcoming glow. It is a weak, greasy orange light shining through the holes. It casts strange, distorted, and menacing shadows. If you're honest, it looks more haunted than haunting. If it stays lit for more than 5 minutes, you consider it a small miracle and immediately take credit for your superior craftsmanship. For the children, these carved turnips are both delight and terror. They compete to see who can make the ugliest, most grotesque face. A few dare each other to carry their lanterns on a string through the darkest part of the village, hoping to startle a friend, or perhaps an unlucky chicken. As you survey the line of lumpy, flickering, grumpy-faced lanterns, you can't help but feel a weird sense of pride. The turnip is nobody's idea of perfect. It's a little ugly, a lot stubborn. But for one night, it is the heart of the celebration. It is proof that with enough determination, a very dull knife, and a willingness to cry in public, even the most unglamorous vegetable can shine. Your costume is ready. Your turnip is flickering. The bonfire is raging. Now you must secure the home. In a world without science, a world where a sudden illness, a bolt of lightning, or a failed crop can feel like a personal targeted attack, you put your faith in rituals, lots of them. On Halloween, the urge to ward off evil, disease, bad luck, spirits, and whatever else might slither in after dark, reaches its yearly peak. You are not just locking the door. You are embarking on a full, multi-sensory defensive campaign. You are armed with a handful of weeds, a pinch of salt, and enough amulets to rattle when you walk. Let's start with the herbs. Your house, on this night, will smell like an overcooked stew garnished by a sleep-deprived botanist. You have been gathering these herbs for weeks. Rosemary, you hang a bundle over the door. Rosemary is for remembrance. This is a polite nod to the friendly ancestors. It says, "We remember you and you are welcome." You burn a bundle, or at least you scatter the dried leaves. Sage is for cleansing. Its sharp, clean smoke is meant to purify the space, driving out any lingering, malevolent energy. This is the mysterious one. No one is quite sure what mugwort does, but the village wise woman insists it works. It's for protection, for warding. Dried nettle, hung in a pouch, is said to turn back curses. You hang bunches of this stuff over the door lintel. You tuck sprigs under your straw-filled pillow. You scatter dried, crushed leaves in the corners of the hut where the shadows are deepest. If anyone sneezes, it is taken as a good omen. Ah, the herbs are at work, obviously. Now, salt. Salt is a universal remedy. It is precious. You use it to preserve the meat that will keep you alive all winter. But tonight, you are willing to spare a handful. Salt is pure. It is of the earth. And spirits, it is said, hate it. You sprinkle a thin, careful line of salt across your threshold. No spirit, the legend says, can cross a line of salt. You put a pinch on every windowsill. If you are really worried, if you are truly anxious about spectral bed bugs, you might even sprinkle a tiny bit in your bed sheets. The only downside is waking up crunchy. Finally, iron. Cold iron. Iron is not a magical, organic material like wood or stone. It is a human invention. It is forged in fire. It is strong and it is permanent. And for all these reasons, ghosts, fairies, and all manner of spirits are said to detest it. If you have an iron key, you hang it by the door. If you are lucky enough to own a horseshoe, a symbol of both iron and luck, you nail it above the lintel, points up, so the luck doesn't run out. If you have neither of these things, any rusty nail will do. You drive it into the door frame. In a pinch, you can just wave your one heavy cast iron cooking pot around your head and declare yourself immune to curses. It might not work, but as we've noted, it will certainly clear some space at the bonfire. There's a deep, abiding comfort in these rituals. You are not just protecting yourself. You are joining a long, unbroken line of anxious ancestors, all of whom did these exact same things, all of whom were just as scared, all of whom hoped to make it safely through the darkest night of the year. If there's one thing medieval people excel at, it's believing in superstitions. The rituals are the actions you take. The superstitions are the rules you follow. On Halloween night, your village is a living, breathing encyclopedia of ominous warnings, whispered reminders, and just-in-case habits. Survival is less about common sense and more about memorizing a very complex, unwritten bingo card of do's and don'ts. Let's review the rules. We've covered this, but it bears repeating. You hang your herbs, you nail your iron, you lay your salt. But you do not leave it open, not for a second. An open door tonight is not an invitation. It is a vacancy sign for any wandering spirit. We've mentioned the salt, but there's more. You must step into your house with your right foot first. Left foot? Don't even think about it. The left, or sinister side, has always been associated with bad luck. To lead with the left foot is to invite trouble, illness, or a visit from that one ancestor who never learned to knock. What about the black cat? This is a complicated one. In some traditions, a black cat is a good omen, a guardian who can see ghosts. In others, it is a witch's familiar in disguise. On Halloween, no one is taking any chances. If a black cat crosses your path, you are advised to stop, spin in a circle 3 times, spit over your left shoulder, the sinister shoulder, to ward off the evil, and mutter a hasty prayer to Saint Felix, the patron saint of, "Please don't let this be the year I turn into a toad." You close them, you shutter them, not just to keep out the chill, but to prevent wandering souls from floating in and rearranging your furniture. But you do prop a single blessed candle in the window. This serves a vital dual purpose. 1, it lights the way for your friendly ancestors. 2, it signals the unfriendly spirits that you are on to their tricks. If your candle flickers or goes out suddenly, it is a very bad sign. It means something is watching you. Or perhaps you just need better tallow. Either way, it's a conversation starter. The mirror, if you are wealthy enough to own one, perhaps a small polished piece of metal or dark glass, is strictly off limits. Looking into a mirror at midnight on All Hallows Eve is said to invite disaster. You might see your future. You might see your own death. Or, worst of all, you might see Gerald behind you trying to borrow your cloak. To be safe, you cover every reflective surface with a scrap of cloth. You must save a bit of your dinner for the spirits. This is not charity. This is a bribe. You leave a plate on the table, a crust of bread on the hearth, or a sip of cider by the door. The message is clear. Please take this offering and leave the rest of my family in peace. And finally, do not ever speak ill of the dead tonight, not even as a joke. If you do, you might wake up tomorrow with unexplained bruises, missing socks, or that sudden chilling ability to speak fluent Latin. By dawn, if you followed all the rules, you've survived. Not by logic, but by sheer, stubborn faith in traditions older than the village itself. In the chaos of medieval Halloween, while everyone is busy safeguarding their souls, their crops, and the last jug of cider, someone inevitably remembers the most vulnerable and most valuable members of the household. The animals. Your cat, your dog, your chickens. Each one is a vital part of your survival, and each, in the medieval mind, is a potential target for spirits. If a spirit wants to haunt something, it'll start with your livestock. They deserve their own protection rituals. Let's start with the cats. In most seasons, cats are both a blessing and a curse. They are expert mouses, a vital form of pest control that protects your precious grain stores. But they are also aloof, nocturnal, and slightly sinister. They are the prime suspects in any case of unexplained mischief. On Halloween, though, they become valuable protectors. That black cat you were wary of on the path? If it's your black cat, it's a guardian. Folklore insists that a black cat can see ghosts and will hiss, chasing away evil spirits. Provided, of course, that you treat it well. This means extra scraps at dinner. It means a red ribbon tied loosely around its neck, red for luck and to ward off the evil eye. And it means strict instructions to the children. Do not tug its tail, not tonight. For one night, the cat goes from suspicious pest to honored guardian, lounging smugly by the hearth, pretending not to notice the sudden profound respect. Next, the dogs. Medieval dogs are loyal, noisy, and famously unbothered by the concept of private property. They are working animals. Tonight, you keep them indoors, or at the very least, tied close to the house. The howling of a dog at midnight on All Hallows' Eve is considered a dire omen. It is proof that something supernatural, something it can see but you cannot, is circling the yard. To prevent this, some villagers feed their dogs a special meal, perhaps with a bit of blessed bread mixed in. Some will rub their ears with garlic. The dogs are, as you can imagine, less appreciative of this tradition than their owners. A brave few will tie a bit of iron to their collar, convinced it will ward off curses. And then the chickens. Chickens, for reasons known only to medieval logic, are deeply implicated in Halloween superstitions. An egg laid after sundown tonight is highly suspect. It must be found, and it must be buried at the crossroads before dawn, lest it hatch a demon chick or a basilisk. So the hens get their own red ribbons. The coop, a small, fragile wooden box, is sprinkled with salt and herbs, not just to discourage spirits, but just as likely to discourage Gerald's midnight egg raids. All the animals are brought in early. The doors are bolted. Even the family pig, if you have one, is allowed a rare place of honor inside, just until the worst of the night passes. The cows and horses in the barn get a blessing, a cross of ash on their foreheads, and a little extra hay. The real magic, though, is in the rituals themselves. The families whisper blessings over their animals. They brush them with hands scented by rosemary and sage. For a few hours, the fear of spirits is softened by the warmth of this shared tradition. We have talked about ghosts, we have talked about spirits, and the restless dead. But there was another, perhaps more immediate and more terrifying threat. A threat that was not human and had never been human. Long before fairy meant delicate wings, flower crowns, and a helpful, sparkling magic, the word struck medieval villagers with a very different and very potent kind of terror. In your world, Fairies are not dainty, they are dangerous. They are the fair folk, the good people, the neighbors. You call them these polite, placating names because you are too afraid to call them what they are. You never, ever thank them. To thank them is to acknowledge a debt, and you do not want to be in their debt. These beings are not helpful. They are, at best, amoral and mischievous. At worst, they are deadly. They don't sprinkle pixie dust. They cause livestock to vanish. They spoil the cream. They blight the crops. And, most terrifying of all, they steal children. On Halloween, when the walls between worlds are at their thinnest, you take precautions against ghosts. But most of all, you never, ever take your eyes off the fair folk. Your main concern? Changelings. This is one of the deepest, most primal fears of the medieval parent. The fair folk, it was believed, coveted human children. They would sneak into a hovel on a dark night, steal a healthy human baby from its cradle, and leave one of their own in its place. A changeling. The local wise woman tells you the tales. You've heard the stories from the next village. Stories of infants, once healthy, suddenly becoming strange, sickly, and wrong. Children who scream at the sight of iron, or who cry inconsolably at the sound of church bells. So, mothers sleep with one eye open, and fathers take precautions. They scatter iron nails and cold cinders, the remnants of the hearth fire, across the threshold. Fairies, it is known, cannot stand iron. They cannot cross it. A pair of iron shears or scissors might be left open in the cradle, forming a cross, protecting the baby. Milk is the other great battleground. On ordinary days, milk is the most precious thing in the house. It is life for children, currency for trading. But on Halloween, you always leave out a bowl, a full, fresh bowl. You leave it on the windowsill or by the hearth. This is not an offering of friendship. It is a bribe. It is protection money. Everyone knows that if you forget, you will wake up to find your cow dry, your butter soured, or your best cheese inexplicably missing. Some claim fairies love milk more than gold. Others, as we've said, whisper it's just Gerald sneaking around for a midnight snack. But no one is willing to take the risk. And finally, you avoid the fairy rings, those mysterious, perfect circles of mushrooms that pop up overnight in the fields. On any other day, they are a curiosity. Tonight, they are a mortal danger. You warn the children with a fear in your voice that is not feigned. Do not step inside. Do not even point at them. The rings are fairy doorways. They are portals. And everyone knows that if you linger too long, if you are foolish enough to step inside, you might find yourself pulled into a wild, irresistible dance, forced to waltz and leap and spin until your shoes fall apart, or worse, until you are never seen again. By midnight, the whole village is a patchwork of these charms. Bowls of cream on windowsills, iron shears under pillows, red ribbons on cows' tails. And there is a general, ironclad agreement: if you hear your name called from the dark, from the woods, from the fog, You do not answer. No matter how much it sounds like your mother, your best friend, or the priest promising an early end to Mass. You do not answer. With the home secured, the amulets in place, and the fairies hopefully bribed, the village turns its attention to another great ritual. A ritual of community, remembrance, and, if we're honest, bread. There is no doorbell in your medieval village. If you want to knock on someone's door, you bang on it with a stick, your fist, or, in some cases, a goat. Tonight, you're not just visiting your neighbors for idle gossip, you're going soul-caking. This is the original trick-or-treat, but it is, like everything else, weirder, more theological, and comes with far fewer dental bills. Here's how it works. On All Hallows Eve and the days that follow, you and a gaggle of friends, or, as we've said, enemies, it's hard to tell in those costumes, bundle up and make your way from house to house. Let's follow a group. It's a small band of children, their faces smeared with soot, wearing their father's old tattered tunics. They look less like superheroes and more like miniature bog monsters. They are shivering, half from the cold, half from the giddy, nervous energy of the night. They approach a door. It's a heavy, rough-planked wooden door. They don't knock, they bang. And then they sing. It is not a pop anthem. It is not even a tuneful hymn. It is a slightly off-key, nasal, repetitive chant, a plea, known by every child who has ever been bribed with bread. The lyrics vary by region, but they are all variations on a theme. A soul cake, a soul cake. Please, good mistress, a soul cake. 1 for Peter, 2 for Paul, 3 for him who made us all. Or, more to the point, soul, soul, for a soul cake. I pray you, good missus, a soul cake. They repeat this over and over, their thin voices cutting through the cold night air until someone gives in. The wooden bar on the inside of the door groans. The door creaks open. A sliver of warm, smoky light appears. The face of the good mistress peers out, her face already half shadow from the firelight within. She is holding a basket. Inside are the soul cakes. These are the main event. They are little, round, flat buns. They are a cross between a dense, heavy bread and a dry, shortbread cookie. They are not sweet by our standards. They are, at best, mildly sweetened with a bit of honey, if the family is wealthy. They are spiced with currants or nutmeg if they are very wealthy. Most of the time, they are just simple dry oatcakes marked on the top with a cross to signify their holy purpose. The woman hands a cake to each child. Maybe also a piece of fruit, like a small wrinkled apple, or a handful of nuts, or, if it is the house of the village reeve, a rare, precious, tiny coin. In return, the children make a promise. They promise to say a prayer, a real prayer, for the souls of the departed from that specific household. A prayer for your father, a prayer for your grandmother. It is an even theological trade. Calories for cosmic insurance. Soul caking is open to all. The most enthusiastic participants are the children and the occasional teenager desperate for extra carbs before winter. but it is also a vital lifeline for the poor, the beggars, the widows. For them, this is not a game. It is a way to survive, a rare night of sanctioned generosity. But what happens if the door does not open? What if the mistress of the house is stingy? Or what if she has simply run out of cakes? This is where the trick part of trick-or-treating comes in. But it is, again, a very different kind of trick. You don't egg the house. You cannot. Eggs are food. They are precious protein. They are winter survival. To waste an egg on a prank would be an economic crime so severe you'd likely be in the stocks for it. You don't toilet paper the bushes. For one, toilet paper has not been invented yet. And for two, the medieval equivalent, precious, rare, and expensive to make paper, is even more valuable. No, the medieval trick is more subtle. It is more symbolic. And it is, in its own way, more terrifying. Maybe you leave a turnip on the doorstep, that gnarled, unlucky, haunted-looking turnip. A simple, silent, vegetable-based threat. Maybe you just recite a different kind of verse, a darker verse, a particularly gloomy rhyme about what happens in the afterlife to stingy souls who do not share their bread. Or maybe, if you're really bold, you and your friends engage in a bit of sanctioned mischief. You rearrange a few of the firewood logs that are stacked by the door. You hide someone's shoes which were left outside to dry. You tie a bit of twine across the path, hoping to trip the owner in the morning. It's all in good fun. But it's not just fun. Everyone in the village knows that being a stingy host on All Hallows Eve is quite literally asking for a year of bad luck. It's asking for your milk to sour. It's asking for your bread not to rise. It's asking for your porridge to be, well, slightly haunted. There is a deep social logic to this. Soul caking is not just about free snacks. It is a ritual of generosity. It forces the haves to share with the have-nots, at least for one night. It is a ritual of humility. It allows the poor to ask for help without shame, cloaked in the sanctity of the holiday. And it is a ritual of community bonding. The cakes you give away are not just for the living. They are, in a very real sense, for the dead. Every offering is a small, sweet lifeline for a soul in limbo. Every door you knock on is another connection to neighbors who, for the rest of the year, you might only interact with when arguing about whose chickens are in whose garden. And as you, a child, shuffle back home, your cheeks cold, your belly full, and your small basket heavy with half-stale buns, you feel a strange, profound satisfaction. You fed your belly and your soul. You've kept the village ghosts appeased. And you've ensured another year of collective, fragile, communal goodwill. You may not have chocolate bars, but you've got what really matters. A full stomach, a lighter conscience, and just enough cake left to share. But soul cakes are just the beginning. Let's move to the main event, the communal feast. This is a masterclass in what we called medieval culinary anxiety. The atmosphere is use it or lose it. The harvest is over. Winter is coming. And everything in your larder, your small, cold, damp storage room, is a few days away from becoming a science experiment. This is not a feast of refinement. It is a potluck dinner where the theme is get rid of it before it gets weird. So, what is on the menu? If you've got cabbages, onions, leeks, or turnips, congratulations! You are the proud host of tonight's buffet. Most dishes are roasted, not in an oven, but over the great communal bonfire. This means, as we've noted, that everything tastes faintly or sometimes strongly of smoke and whatever Gerald dropped into the ashes when no one was looking. The centerpiece, root vegetables, turnips, parsnips, carrots, and the occasional, dreaded rutabaga. These are not the small, sweet, tender vegetables we are used to. These are large, tough, fibrous, and earthy. They have been in the ground for months. They are peeled, if you're fancy. Most of the time, they are just washed or wiped on your tunic. They are chopped into rough, large hunks. They are tossed in a bit of animal fat, if you're lucky, and they are roasted on a grate or just thrown directly into the embers until they are soft enough to eat with the 5 remaining teeth you've got. Sometimes, for extra flavor, you add herbs. More often, you just pretend. Everything is communal. There are no individual plates. Platters are passed around, fingers grabbing whatever looks least likely to bite back. Cutlery is rare. Forks will not be a common dining utensil for centuries. You have a knife, perhaps, and a spoon if you're well off. Mostly you have your hands and a thick slice of bread that acts as a plate, a spoon, and a napkin, all in one. This bread is a character in its own right. It is dense, dark, and slightly sour. Medieval bread is the stuff of legend, mostly because it is so heavy it could legally be classified as a weapon. It is full of bran and sometimes accidentally bits of the millstone. The loaves tonight are extra special. Sometimes they are baked with dried fruit, nuts, or honey, if your harvest was good, or if you're on suspiciously good terms with the local miller. Every bite is a reminder that gluten sensitivity is a modern luxury. For the lucky, or for those recently back from a successful poaching expedition, there might be some meat on the table. But let us be clear. We are not talking about a steak. We are talking about a sliver of intensely salty bacon, a rabbit stewed with onions until it falls apart, or a pigeon that has, quite frankly, seen better days. Salted fish is another staple. Great wooden barrels of cod or herring preserved in so much salt that they are as stiff as a board. You must soak it for hours or even days just to make it edible. You will want to avoid eye contact with it if you hope to keep your appetite. Cheese, if it appears at all, is firm, sharp, and just pungent enough to remind you that it was once a living thing. Of course, you need something to wash it all down. Water is basically a death wish. The village well is often downhill from the village graveyard or the animal pens. It is full of things you do not want to think about. So, you are drinking weak ale or cider. And yes, everyone is drinking it, children included. This is not the strong hoppy ale of a modern craft brewery. This is small beer. It is watery. It is low alcohol, but it has been boiled in the brewing process, which, though they don't know why, makes it 1,000 times safer than the water. It is a way to hydrate and to get some liquid calories from the grain. The mead, made from whatever wild honey the bees haven't weaponized, is reserved for special toasts. It is sweet, potent, and reserved for that one uncle who is already asleep by the fire. And dessert? Well, if you count an apple baked in the embers until it explodes into a soft, mushy, smoky-tasting pulp, then you are in luck. Sweets are rare. Sugar, as we've said, is more expensive than your neighbor's entire house. It is a medicine sold by the apothecary, not a food. But nuts, hazelnuts and walnuts are plentiful. They are tossed in the fire, cracked open, and eaten by the handful. Dried fruits make an appearance, usually chewier than a blacksmith's shoe, but sweet enough to make you forget for a moment that your life is hard. The food isn't just about calories. It is about ritual. It is about sharing. It is about offering. It is about praying. Every bite connects you to your ancestors, and more importantly, gives you one last, hearty, communal taste of warmth before the long, cold winter sets in. As the eating winds down, the social aspect of the night ramps up, and it all centers on the fire. If you think social media is a modern invention, you have clearly never stood around a medieval village bonfire on Halloween night. Sure, you can't like someone's outfit with a tap, but you can compliment their goat hide mask to their face, which is the original version of a heart emoji. This fire is the hot, smoky, gossip-filled center of your world. It is the community hub. It is the medieval message board, the rumor mill, the dating app, and the talent show, all rolled into one. As the sun sets and the chill creeps in, everyone gravitates toward the crackling flames. This is where the real magic happens. This is where the life of the village is lived, in public. Want to announce an engagement? You don't send a card. You just stand near the fire with your intended and say it loud enough for the 3 biggest gossips in the village to overhear. In 10 minutes, the entire village will know. Looking for a lost goat? Describe it to your neighbor. In 5 minutes, the entire village will be on the lookout. Or, if it's Gerald's goat, pretending they never saw it. There is no privacy. This is a fundamental concept we must grasp. Everything you say is public. Everything you do is up for commentary. Did you drop your bread in the fire? 5 people will tease you about it, not just tonight, but until spring. Did you wear the same crusty cloak as last year? Expect to hear about it from everyone, who are all, of course, pretending they didn't do the exact same thing. Here, reputation is currency, and laughter is the main form of payment. If you're not careful, your embarrassing story will be passed around this fire faster than a basket of slightly charred chestnuts. The bonfire is the great equalizer and the great stage. It's where you find out who is courting whom, who is feuding with whom, and whose turnips are the subject of village-wide envy. And of course, the fire is the stage. As the mead flows, someone, usually the local bard, or that one uncle who is convinced he's hilarious, will start up a song. The bard clutches his battered lute, which has only half its strings left. He's trying to tune it by the flickering, unreliable light of the fire. If he's sober, you might get a long, melancholy ballad about a lost love, or a noble knight, or, more likely, a harvest that never grew. If he's not sober, You can expect a medley of folk tunes, some very questionable rhymes, and at least one improvised verse about Gerald's disastrous attempt at bobbing for apples. This is the eerie soundtrack of the night. It's not just the bard, it's the chants. As the darkness deepens, the villagers, warmed by ale, gather in circles. They hum, they sing, they mutter the old words. Spirits be gone, ghosts beware, stay away from Agnes's bread. It doesn't really matter what you say, as long as everyone joins in. The sound rises and falls with the wind, sometimes soft and comforting, sometimes sharp enough to startle the sheep. And then come the drums, if you count banging on empty barrels, upturned pails, or anything else that echoes as drums. The rhythm is never steady, it is never on beat, but it is infectious. Soon, the whole village is caught in a syncopated, chaotic mess of beats, claps, and foot stomps. It is less a band and more a mildly threatening percussion section. The bravest dancer jumps into the circle, their goatskin cape fluttering, feet flying. They are doing their best impression of a ghost, or maybe they are just burning off the evening's excess mead. The church bell adds its own eerie punctuation. At midnight, its deep, somber toll cuts through the music. It is a reminder that not all the night's guests are welcome. For a moment, everyone quiets, listening to the echo fade, hoping it's loud enough to scare off anything with unfinished business. This is the music of survival, the music of laughter in the face of fear, and the music of one more medieval Halloween safely and noisily survived. And in this crowd, by the fire, there is one figure who stands slightly apart. Every medieval village has one. She's the woman who lives at the edge of the fields, in the hovel that is just a little more isolated than the others. Her garden always seems to grow suspiciously well, even in a drought. And she just knows what to rub on a swollen toe or a stubborn cough. On Halloween, she is the busiest and the most nervously respected person in town. She is the wise woman, the healer, the cunning woman, the midwife, or, depending on who you ask and how the harvest went, the witch. You can find her house by following the scent of dried herbs and the faint, persistent trail of neighborhood gossip. Her walls are not lined with tapestries. They are lined with bundles of sage, nettle, and mugwort hanging from the rafters. Strange jars line her shelves, some filled with dark honey, others with substances of deeply mysterious origin. When a child gets a fever, she's the first one called. When a cow won't milk, someone is already running to her door. Even the local priest, who will insist very loudly that he doesn't believe in such nonsense, has been known to send his niece to fetch her tea when he gets a cold. On Halloween night, her reputation and her usefulness grows even larger. The boundaries between worlds are thin, and everyone wants a little extra insurance. She is, in essence, open for business. She offers protective charms, a braided ribbon of red and black, a small bead, a bit of iron bent into a strange shape. She sells them for a modest price, a loaf of bread, a bit of cheese, or sometimes just a promise of a favor. Mothers line up, asking for advice about bad dreams. Nervous teenagers, their faces red from the fire, inquire about love potions, which, more often than not, turn out to be nothing more than sugared rosewater and a stern warning to wash behind your ears. Yet her expertise is a double-edged sword. She might be honored at dusk, but she is eyed with suspicion at dawn. Medieval logic is fickle. If your rash goes away, she is a miracle worker, a saint. If your rash doesn't go away, or if, God forbid, your neighbor's goat falls ill the same week you visited her, well, maybe she's dabbling in something less holy. The line between cunning woman and witch is as thin as the mist on the fields, and it shifts with every rumor, every unexplained illness, and every ill-timed lightning storm. She knows this better than anyone, and she keeps her wits about her. Her stories are always wrapped in riddles. Her remedies are offered with a shrug. Might help, she'll say. Might not. Try it and see. She is a master of ambiguity. Children believe she can talk to animals, and some of the adults secretly agree. Her cat, a large, black, inscrutable creature, is both a companion and a silent warning. Don't ask too many questions. On this night, she stands by the fire, her silhouette both ordinary and just a little larger than life. She is the crossroads of fear and hope, tradition and suspicion. Whether she's a witch, a doctor, or just really, really good at guessing, no one can quite decide. But when the nights are long and the world feels thin, you're always, always a little glad she's on your side. As the night deepens, the bonfire outside still rages, but the youngest children and the oldest and the most sensible have retreated. They have gone indoors into the small, smoky, single-room hovels. But the night is not over. Forget Netflix, forget TikTok. On Halloween in medieval Europe, your primetime entertainment is the ancient communal art of scaring yourself and your entire family silly with ghost stories. You don't have surround sound. You don't have a jump scare algorithm. What you have is a handful of sputtering rushlights. These are not even candles. They're just reeds dipped in animal fat, giving off a smoky, feeble light. You have a room full of nervous relatives, and you have the collective, unwritten memory of every weird, sad, or terrifying thing that has ever happened in your village. You settle in for the evening. You are huddled near the hearth, not just for warmth, but for the comfort of the fire's light. Everyone is hoping that this year the tales are only slightly less traumatizing than last year's. The rules of medieval ghost storytelling are simple. First, the room must be dim. The fewer candles, the better. The rushlights sputter and smoke, filling the hut with greasy, dancing shadows. It is just enough light to see the whites of everyone's eyes, wide with anticipation. You start, naturally, with the local legends. Every settlement has at least one. And the storyteller, perhaps your grandfather, his face a mask of shadows, leans in. "You all know," he whispers, "the story of the restless plowman." And everyone shivers. They do know. They say he still walks the fields at night, just beyond the south fence. He's searching for the ox he lost in the great flood of '49. He lost his ox and his field and his family, and he went mad with grief. The children's eyes are wide, and they say, the grandfather continues, if you are out too late and you hear a sound like a man weeping and a shovel scraping in the dirt, do not turn around. He is still trying to plow his field. He is still looking for his ox. The best stories are close to home. They are tied to places you pass every day. The old millstone, the dark patch of woods, the bend in the river. The point isn't just to scare. It is to make every dark corner and every unfamiliar sound after sunset feel personal. Suddenly, every creek, every lane, every garden gate is a potential portal to the afterlife. Then you have the tales of the revenants. These are not subtle, ethereal ghosts. These are physical, angry spirits. These are the dead who rise from their graves on All Hallows Eve, hungry for a meal, a memory, or just someone to acknowledge that their burial wasn't up to code. These ghosts bang on windows. They howl through keyholes. They move tools around in the barn, just enough to make you question your sanity. And of course, no story is complete without a good curse. The tale of the old woman who refused to give her last loaf of bread to a hungry stranger, only to be haunted every night by shadowy figures and mysterious, sharp, rapping knocks. The man who laughed loudly at the very idea of witches, only to wake up with his hair braided into knots and all his chickens laying black, foul-smelling eggs. Every story is a lesson. Be kind to travelers. Be generous. Never mock the supernatural. And always, always keep a clove of garlic in your shoe, just in case. As these stories wind down, the mood shifts. The fear is still there, but it's joined by a different kind of anxiety, the anxiety of the future. In a medieval village, Halloween is not just about fending off ghosts. It is also the best night of the year to peek into that future, using whatever questionable household tools you have lying around. If you're hoping for Instagram-worthy predictions or even just a vague sense of reassurance, prepare for disappointment. Medieval fortune-telling is mostly apples, candles, and the kind of logic that makes a modern horoscope look like quantum physics. It begins, as so many things do this night, with the apple. Apples are prized. They are one of the few fresh, sweet things available. And tonight, they are also magical oracles. The classic trick is for the young, unmarried women, apple peels. A young woman takes an apple and a knife. The goal is to peel the apple in one single, long, unbroken spiral. This takes concentration. The room is quiet, save for the scraping of the knife. If the peel breaks, that is very bad luck. It means a year of solitude or worse. But if she succeeds, if she holds up that long dangling curl of green or red peel, she then tosses it over her left shoulder. She does not look. The other women crowd around, holding a candle, to look at the shape the peel has formed on the dusty earthen floor. The letter it forms is supposedly the initial of her future spouse. Unless, of course, it just looks like a question mark, or a blob, or even worse, an actual worm that was in the apple. In that case, you laugh it off very nervously and claim you were just checking for freshness. This is a night of high social stakes. Everyone is watching. Apples are not the only tool in your medieval prophecy kit. Candles are very popular. A favorite ritual involves setting a row of candles in a dark room, each one named for a different suitor. The one that burns the brightest or the longest, that is the one with the truest, strongest love. This, of course, leads to all sorts of accidents. A sudden cough that blows out a rival's candle, a trip that jostles the table. Nuts make an appearance too. A young couple might place 2 hazelnuts on the hearth near the fire, 1 nut for each of them. If the nuts roast quietly side by side, it is a good omen. It means a long, peaceful, and prosperous life together. But if one of the nuts pops or cracks or jumps away from the fire, that is very bad news. It means the love is not true. It means a future of arguments or unfaithfulness. It mostly just means the nut had too much moisture in it, but no one is here for science. Bread is also used. A common trick is to bake little charms into the buns or cakes. A coin for wealth. A thimble for a life of hard work or spinsterhood, a bit of a consolation prize. A button for an undetermined fate or a tailor. A ring for marriage, of course. If you bite into a charm, you are supposed to act delighted, even if you just nearly broke one of your 5 remaining teeth. And finally, some methods require even less effort. Dream interpretation. There is a ritual of the dumb cake. A group of unmarried women would, in total silence, prepare a small, strange cake, often with unusual ingredients, like, bizarrely, soot. They would eat this cake, still in silence, and then they would go to bed, sleeping on their left side without speaking a word. They would, supposedly, dream of their future spouse. If your dreams involve livestock or turnips instead, well, you just don't talk about it the next morning. Now, let's go back outside to the bonfire, because not all fortune-telling is so quiet. Let's return to the night's centerpiece game, the game that perfectly blends humiliation with the very real threat of drowning in 3 inches of tepid water. The battered wooden barrel is rolled into the village square. It is sloshing suspiciously because, as we know, it has been used for everything from cider to laundry, and, at least once, for transporting a goose with trust issues. Someone fills it halfway with well water. This water is not heated. It is freezing. It is just cold enough to make you regret every decision that led to this moment. Then a dozen apples, picked if you're lucky, foraged if you're not, are dumped in. They float on the surface like innocent little testaments to the unpredictability of medieval plumbing. The rules are delightfully simple. You kneel in the mud. You put your arms behind your back. No cheating, Agnes. We all saw you last year. And you plunge your face into the freezing water. The object is to bite an apple before you run out of breath or dignity, whichever comes first. For the spectators huddled around the barrel, this is the best entertainment of the season. For the contestants, it's somewhere between an endurance sport and a public health risk. There is, of course, strategy. Some people go for the quick, aggressive baptismal dunk, emerging seconds later, sputtering, water streaming from their hair, but with an apple clamped between their teeth and victory in their eyes. Others bob gently. They nudge the apples with their noses. They try to corner one, but they usually end up with nothing but a mouthful of someone else's spit. And let's not even get started on the hygiene. Medieval villagers are a tough crowd, but even they know that this barrel is more a soup of humanity than a sanitary vessel. By the end of the game, the water is flecked with straw, hair, bits of soot, and other mystery bits that nobody wants to claim. If you're lucky, you come away with nothing worse than a sore neck and the knowledge that your immune system has just gotten a very serious workout. And this, too, is a form of fortune-telling. As we said, medieval folklore insists that if you successfully snag an apple on the first try, you'll marry within the year. If your apple slips away, you can look forward to another 12 months of solitude and increasingly pointed questions from your grandmother. The real fortune, of course, is not swallowing too much of the barrel water and avoiding Gerald's sneezing fit from the last round. As the night wears on and the mead flows, a different kind of entertainment begins. The rituals of fortune-telling give way to rituals of pure, unadulterated bravado. If you think thrill-seeking is a modern invention, you have clearly never watched a medieval villager size up a roaring bonfire after 2 mugs of mead. On Halloween, with a great fire burning, bonfire jumping is not just an activity. It is practically a community requirement. Tonight, the flames are more than warmth. They are a test of courage. They are a display of athletic prowess. And they are an opportunity for the local healer to brush up on their splinter removal and burn salve application. It all starts innocently enough. The bonfire is a towering inferno. Kids are kept at a safe distance, at least for the first hour. Adults mingle at the edge, sipping their weak ale, trying to guess who will be the first to attempt the leap. There are rules. Of course, they are unwritten, inconsistent, and mostly invented on the spot. You must jump over the lowest part of the flames, not the highest. This rule is often the first to be broken. You must not wear your best tunic. Absolutely no goats, chickens, or turnip lanterns allowed in the jump zone. And if you are caught cheating by, say, waiting until the fire dies down to a polite, glowing pile of embers, you will be roasted in the court of public opinion long after the night is over. The bravest or most reckless go first. A running start, a wild, ale-fueled shout, and a leap that is, quite frankly, more hope than strategy. If you clear the flames, you are a hero, for the night at least. You land, perhaps stumbling, on the other side, to a chorus of cheers. If you don't clear the flames, well, you pick yourself up, you dust off your singed pride. You pretend it was all part of the plan. A few onlookers will clap, most will laugh. And at least one relative will demand to inspect your socks for scorch marks. For the young and unmarried, this too is a ritual. Folklore insists that a successful leap brings luck, fertility, or a guaranteed marriage proposal before spring. If a young couple is caught holding hands mid-jump, it's either the beginning of true love or a surefire way to land face first in the mud. The fire, for all its danger, is symbolic. In the medieval mind, jumping the flames is a way to leave behind the bad luck and misfortune of the old year. You are, quite literally, jumping out of bad luck and landing safely, if a little scorched, on the path ahead. It is a ritual cleansing, a dare to fate, and, above all, an excuse to act like an idiot with everyone you know watching. As the bonfire jumping winds down and the participants nurse their blisters, the night descends into its final chaotic phase, drunken revelry and pranks. The ale has flowed. The mead is gone. The adults are reliving their youth. The arm wrestling matches begin, pitting brawny farmers against nimble weavers. Wheelbarrow races are held on the only bit of flat ground not currently occupied by livestock. These lead to more bruises and more laughter. The dancing becomes less a circle and more an enthusiastic but hazardous mob. And this is when trick night truly begins. We've mentioned the tricks of the soul cakers, but the adult pranks are on another level. This is where the villagers blow off a year's worth of steam and test their creativity. The classic prank, as we've noted, hiding all the village shoes. You wake up to find every boot and clog missing, lined up instead along the churchyard wall, or, if the pranksters were particularly ambitious, strung from a tree. Another favorite, moving road signs. Or, more accurately, swapping the crude wooden arrows so that any travelers end up in someone else's pig pen. Livestock are prime targets. Nothing says Happy Halloween like discovering your best goat has been painted with streaks of berry juice, or your chickens are all wearing tiny, fashionable scraps of cloth as capes. Occasionally, a particularly bold prankster will sneak a sheep into someone else's kitchen. But the ultimate shock, the legend that is told for years, putting a live eel in the family's only water barrel. The screams are legendary, and so is the chase that follows, usually ending in a pile of muddy villagers, an eel on the run, and a new set of rules for next year's festivities. The unwritten rule is simple. Don't do anything that can't be fixed with elbow grease, a loaf of bread, or an extra pint at the tavern. If you wake up to find your bed stuffed with straw or your cat painted like a demon, you shrug, you laugh, and you vow with all your heart to get your revenge next year. And then dawn. The first weak, gray light of dawn creeps in through the cracks in your shutter. It gently and pitilessly illuminates a scene that can only be described as festive disaster. Last night's bonfire has fizzled into a sad, smoking mound of black embers. The air in the village square is thick with the smell of cold ashes, spilled ale, scorched bread, and someone's attempt at roasting root vegetables that went tragically, terribly wrong. It's the morning after medieval Halloween, and nothing says good party quite like the sensation that your mouth is lined with sawdust and your head is being squeezed by an invisible and very judgmental monk. You open your eyes. Your house is a museum of questionable decisions. There is a mask made of sheep's wool tangled in the rushes on the floor. There is a shoe by the door that definitely does not belong to you. And, most alarmingly, there is that half-carved turnip lantern still glowing weakly in the corner, its face just as grumpy in the morning light. You can't remember if it's supposed to ward off spirits or if it's just a leftover prop from the world's saddest puppet show. You decide to avoid eye contact with it and focus on the very important business of sitting very, very still. Other villagers emerge in similar states of distress. Agnes is stumbling out of her cottage, her hair askew, clutching the last soul cake like it contains the answer to eternal life. Gerald is picking hay out of his beard and trying to figure out why exactly his feet are wrapped in a tablecloth. The children, immune to hangovers, are already outside, comparing bruises and trading ghost stories, each one scarier than the last. Now comes the reckoning. People swap stories, trying to piece together what exactly happened after the third round of singing and before Gerald's infamous goat impression. There are rumors of a midnight dance around the well, a dramatic showdown over the last honey cake, and the minor but persistent mystery of the missing church bell rope. The local priest, looking more tired than holy, offers an extra prayer for good judgment, good health, and the safe return of all livestock. This is the hour for resolutions. Promises are made. Never again will I eat so many nuts. Never again will I dance so close to the bonfire. Never again will I let Gerald anywhere near the cider barrel. The adults vow to be more sensible, which everyone knows will last exactly until the next festival. As the village tidies itself, as the leftover turnips are tossed to the pigs, who wisely avoid them, the mood begins to shift, because today is November 1st. The transition, as we've said, is jarring. It's time to trade the animal skin, still smelling of smoke and sin, for your best church tunic. It's time to stumble back to the village square and into the church. Last night, you were shrieking around a bonfire. This morning, it is all incense, bells, and the comforting sacred monotony of church Latin. The service is packed. It is a marathon of readings and chants. You are here to honor the saints, the martyrs, the good guys. It is the other half of the holiday, the balance. After the wild, pagan, fearful night of chaos comes the calm, Christian, orderly day of remembrance. You have faced the dark. You have honored the dead. And now you honor the holy. As the day wears on, the festive mood returns, just holier. But the legends of the night before, they are already beginning. The stories of the pranks, the ghost sightings, the perfect leap over the fire. These stories, told and retold, will keep the village warm in its own way for the entire winter. They are proof that we can explain the unexplainable, share a laugh in the face of fear, and find light, however small, in the heart of the year's longest nights. And so, our night in the medieval village comes to an end. The embers of the bonfire have faded. The last dry crumb of the soul cake has been eaten. The villagers have survived. We have braved smoky rooms, ghost stories designed to keep children in therapy for life, and bonfire stunts that made medieval insurance premiums spike. But for all the fear and the fever dreams, there is a certain stubborn charm to this ancient night. The resilience of these villagers, dancing, singing, and laughing in the face of long winters and long odds, is its own kind of magic. Even as they layered on mud and moss and animal skins, even as they wondered if that rustle in the dark was Uncle Reginald's ghost or just an angry goose, they found connection. They found comfort. They found in each other a reason to keep the fire burning just a little longer. So tonight, as you curl up in your clean, safe, modern bed with actual heating and snacks that are unlikely to summon spirits, maybe give a quiet thank you to the countless souls who made it through nights like these, who passed down stories and rituals, and let's be honest, a truly impressive collection of irrational fears. History, after all, is a reminder that people are stubborn, superstitious, and just a little bit ridiculous. It's also proof that we endure, we adapt, and we always find a reason to gather by the fire. Rest easy tonight. You are safe from haunted turnips. You are safe from phantom cows. The only spirits you'll need to worry about are the ones in your dreams. Sleep well.